Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of the J6, the January 6th committee. Now, the January 6th committee was convened, assembled and selected purely as a device to take out and fully neutralise Donald Trump as a political candidate for future elections. That was their sole purpose. They existed for no other reason. They were a fully politicised, corrupted, in my view, fully politicised and corrupted bunch of political hatchet job goons, and that was their only role. Now, this was a huge subversion of the law, of due legal process, of the rule of law. There isn't anything they didn't trample upon, Constitution, you name it. They bypassed everything and again just engaged in an outrageous political hatchet job, which included fabrication of evidence and so on. Now, they've all been pardoned by, as I understand it, they've all been pardoned by Biden and his goons. I mean, Biden probably didn't even know what he was signing. He's so far out of it, but his goons, the goons that set up the whole hatchet job thing to go after Trump, they wanted to pardon their friends and their helpers and their subverters and so on. So for the actual crimes that they committed on the J6 committee, they're pardoned for those. So there's limits to what the current Justice Department can do. But what they can do is engage in a congressional investigation or investigation of some sort. They can appoint a special counsel, like the Mueller investigation into the fabricated Russia hoax thing that was done in President Trump's first administration. So the Republicans can set up a committee, special counsel, special investigator, whatever, to go after them, give sweeping powers to the investigator. And these people can be all the members of the J6 committee. That crazy lunatic moron that was always crying, he was supposed to be a Republican. There's Cheney, who's like a globalist goon to the bootlaces or the shoelaces, and any others, and go after them. Now, drag them in front of this committee. Inevitably, they're going to either not provide documents or not turn up or fail to answer questions, so they can be held in contempt and then thrown in prison. Now, I don't like that sort of subversion. It's hardly a good idea, but it unfortunately is the mechanism. We subvert, you subvert. If you subvert, we will subvert. It's that causes the separation of powers to become alive again, because it's died. This idea of separation of powers is the globalists in particular, the law, the Constitution, the rules, all this, it just gets in the way of them implementing their ideological agenda, and they hate it. So they have to bypass it or trample over it or whatever. Now, we need to return to this thing where don't touch it, don't subvert it, this separation of powers, which exists, but has really gone, and all over the Western world, by the way, the entire legal establishment, courts, you name it, has been subverted everywhere where the globalists are in charge. They have subverted it everywhere. Britain, Germany, France, you name it, it has been subverted. So now the extent of the subversion may differ. In some cases, some places, the subversion, say in the United Kingdom, the subversion is almost total. Which is terrible, by the way. The separation of powers began in Britain, and in the United States, they've kind of got 50% of the legal establishment subverted, maybe a bit more, but probably a bit more than 50%, maybe less now with President Trump's appointees that are being moving into position. But all across the Western world, it's been subverted. Let's have a look at how separation of powers actually began. Now, in things like, say, civil wars in Europe or civil wars in Britain or dynastic type internecine type warfare, which wasn't open civil war, but in effect you've got competing applicants, if you will, for the role of king. And this guy says, well, I'm the cousin of so and so. This guy says, yeah, well, I'm the nephew of this, and so they have various competing claims for being the king, and then it spills over into some sort of warfare. And as one group, one aspirant to the throne manages to temporarily take control of London. This I'm assuming this is an English thing. Take control of London. What they try and do is then lock up all everyone that they don't like. They want to lock them up or kill them or get their heads chopped off or something like that. So as soon as they get into London, they take control of the legal apparatus of the nation's capital, and they use that. They subvert and corrupt it to go after people they don't like. They just arbitrarily arrest them and arbitrarily detain them and then arbitrarily murder them, saying, "Well, look, it was the judge. The judge said it wasn't me; it was the judge." But in fact, it was a hopelessly corrupted and subverted thing, where the legal system became politicized by whoever, whichever warlord was running the show at the time. Hardly the sort of smooth transition of power and the separation of powers that we think exists in the West today, and did for a while exist. Now, it's been subverted by the globalists, but it did for a while exist. Now, then the other guy gets in, then his armed forces, then he goes after those guys. Yeah, you get my guys, I'm going to get your guys, suck on that. And then maybe there are 3 aspirants to the throne. The other guy comes in and he goes after the other 2. So this was all very, very sort of, it created a lot of uncertainty. Nobody liked it. They liked it when I'm in charge and I can get your guys, that's good. But when you're in charge and you get my guys, that's bad. I don't like it when you get my guys. So in the end, sort of all the idea of you control the justice system, which means you have license to then go and kill people you don't like or put them in prison forever or whatever it might be. This is the sort of environment, this is the sort of thing that caused the political leaders and the elites to get together and say, hey, that's not really working. I don't mind it when I'm getting your guys, but I don't like it when you get my guys. Why don't we agree that the law, the courts, the judges should be independent and they should be apolitical, and so we can fight it out on the battlefield, but we won't subvert the legal system to go and kill off our political opponents. And so the fear of what the other guy might do to you if they got in control, that it was that fear of that uncertainty that caused the separation of powers movement to take place. Now, there were other events along the way. I mean, it wasn't a smooth, one day it was subverted, the next day it was apolitical. It didn't happen like that. And another one was where after the English Civil War, the Oliver Cromwell and all that sort of stuff, King Charles I, during the English Civil War, the Cromwell strong-armed and intimidated the what was called the Privy Council, which is like the most senior politicians of the House of Parliament. Strong-armed them into signing the warrant. I'm simplifying this a little bit, but sign the warrant to order the execution of the king. This is King Charles I. This is like in 1640 something or other. So the king was beheaded. Now, this was a huge step. Regicide, the murder of a king was considered by many to be, wow. I mean, whoa, this is just a step too far. This is just beyond the pale. Now, there are reasons why Cromwell did it, which weren't simply subversion of the law. That was he subverted the law to get the outcome he wanted, which is just as bad as subverting for any reason. But the reason that Cromwell did it there was he believed the king was Britain at the time was a Protestant country, and Cromwell believed, quite rightly, incidentally, that the Catholic army, the Pope was raising money to have a Catholic army that would come in and release the king from custody and to reappoint him to the throne on the basis that he would then convert England to a Catholic country. And this was considered very important. England was an outlier at this point, as indeed was North Germany, the Lutheran type thing, Martin Luther. So Cromwell knew, and others did too. It was hardly a secret that while the king was alive, he would be a rallying point for the Catholic forces that would want to come in and kill off the Protestants, Cromwell included, by the way. So they considered it, expedient under the circumstances to murder the king on the basis that it would end the Catholic agitation, to send a Catholic army into. By the way, the Catholics were very busy in Ireland. This is part of the aggro with Cromwell. The Irish go, oh, Cromwell. But the reality is that Ireland was to be the launching pad for a Catholic army, and that Irish Catholics were more than keen to sign up for the going to England and getting rid of Cromwell and his heavies and reinstalling the king, who was going to be a Catholic sympathetic. So that was the ire, if you like, the beginning of the real serious problem. As long as there was an angry Catholic sort of nation nearby Ireland, where they would launch invasions from, then that had to be dealt with. So that was the aggravation there. Coming back though to this idea of the separation of powers, after this, the consciences rankled, I think, with a lot of people, and they decided that the separation of powers had to be more formal, had to be more agreed upon universally within the political system and the legal system. The idea that politicians can be subverted with minimum legality, by the way. There may be a threat out there, and even though that threat is unproven, we're going to use this as a pretext to go and kill the king. This idea of the separation of powers, where the judicial, the hearing, the legal hearing in court must rely on facts and evidence and not be politicized, is really what the separation of powers is. And that the Privy Council can't, the guys in the Parliament can't be used as a substitute for the legal process and examining the evidence. So the legal apparatus must be separate from the political apparatus. Now, this was something that was exported to the British colonies in North America, this separation of powers thing. And you see it's quite an issue. And if you look at the writings of Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, and all those people, or many of them at least, that were, and some of whom were lawyers, by the way, they realised the separation of powers was key, and they realised how easily that could be subverted and corrupted, and why it had to be part of the if you like, the clear separation of powers and the Constitution, Bill of Rights, those sorts of things that the United States was found. Now, it wasn't perfect. If you look at after the War of Independence, there was a lot of people wanted to settle scores with those who might have been sympathetic to Britain, for example. And some of those, by the way, that were very badly treated and ridden. A lot of the local officials were riding roughshod over their rights, property rights included, then, and this, I think, indicates the measure of some of the founders of the American Republic. Alexander Hamilton, as a case in point, there are others, as a case in point, would represent some of these people, even though they were implacably opposed to the American independence or the Republic. That didn't mean their legal rights ceased to exist. And so they would have advocates, again, no less than Alexander Hamilton, representing them in court. And Hamilton's view was that the independence of the legal system from the government, or from political interference or political intimidation for that matter, was essential if the new republic was to flourish and seem to be and was in practice a rule of law government, where due legal process did apply. Again, was it perfect? No. Were there aberrations? Of course. But it was nonetheless the desired goal. Now, what we saw when the Biden administration came in, and even we saw before that, quite clearly during Trump's first term, was that the law, if it got in the way, or the Constitution, if it got in the way of imposing and installing the globalist project, then it was to be disregarded, again, subverted. And the January 6th committee was, I think, the epitome of that. So coming back to the only way you can bring these people back to the table to say, well, the independence of the judiciary is important, The only way you can do that is if they are fearful of what will happen to them when they are not in control. And so I would argue that the January 6th committee members, what's his face, Kinzinger, Cheney, the whole lot, Pelosi be brought before the committee. Inevitably, without doubt, they will not provide certain documents, and that every one of them should be, like Steve Bannon and Stone and all those others, every one of them should be, I believe, in my view, inevitably they will be in contempt of the investigation or of Congress, and should be put in prison, 3 or 4 months, and to remind them that, okay, this is what will happen to you when you're not in charge. Suck on that. And then that will have a sobering effect on how they view the laws. Oh, we thought we'd only be sticking it up those guys. We didn't think we'd ever be dragged in. So that will sober them up to realize the separation of powers is there for a reason. That the legal system is not a toy for you to use to go after people you don't like, which the Biden or the goons, Biden doesn't know what's going on, the Biden globalist goons have been doing. They've been going after anybody that disagrees with their program, whether it's Christians praying outside of, abortion clinics or people posting things on social media, or just people who are helping and supporting Donald Trump. They've all been earmarked as political enemies, and the justice system has been subverted to go after them. And the separation of powers has been ignored completely, J6 being probably the most classic of them. And those people who are involved, including judges that sent these people to prison, they have to be dragged in front of a committee, and all communications. Were you in communication with any political operatives? If so, you have to declare it. And if you were, then you're not going to be a judge anymore. And this really needs to be, I believe, a central focal point of the Trump administration. You've been Tacitus today at your pushback challenge. Thank you for listening.
Did you say also that